And we're back. So, on this one, we're going to finish up simplifying radicals, and we're going to talk about rationalizing the denominator. Let's start with the basics. 1 over the square root of 2. So here, we have an irrational denominator, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to take we need to get rid of that irrational number in the denominator, but we can't change the value of the fraction. So what we're going to do is we are going to multiply it by 1, because we know that by multiplying it by 1, we don't change the value of the fraction, okay? So the one we need to choose needs to be the form which allows us to get rid of that. So what do we need to add to the square root of 2? Well, we need to add another 2. If you go back and watch the video on prime factorization, you'll see that when you have 2 2's underneath a radical, it goes away. So we're going to multiply this by the square root of 2 over the square root of 2. Sorry about my bird. It's being a little noisy. So when we multiply this by the square root of 2 over the square root of 2, we're multiplying it by 1, but we're not changing the value of the fraction. So when we multiply that, we get the square root of 2 over 2, because the square root of 2 times the square root of 2 is the square root of 4. The square root of 4 is 2. See? So if we have 1 over the square root of 6, we multiply it by the square root of 6 over the square root of 6. That would give us a square root of 6 over 6. Okay? Easy peasy. Now, it gets a little bit more complicated when we're talking about cubes. Because if you remember from the previous video, in order to get rid of the cube, we need 3 2's. Well, we already have 1 2, so we need to add 2 more 2's. So we're going to multiply it by the cubed root of 4, because 2 times 2 is 4. So that's going to give us the cubed root of 4 over the cubed root of 8. And as we did in the last video, we know the cubed root of 8 is 2. So notice that we haven't changed the value of the fraction at all. What we have done is simply made sure that... I'm going to go kill my bird. I'll be right back. So, where were we? I'm back from killing my bird. So what we did was we were able to simplify the denominator, rationalize it without changing the value of it. So it gets a little bit trickier when we, instead of having just a radical on the bottom, have a binomial. So a 1 plus the square root of 2. Now, if you guys remember... Okay, so apparently he just doesn't want me talking to you guys. So he's a bit of a narcissist, so I gave him a mirror. So he's happy right now. So what we want to do is we want to multiply this by the conjugate. What's going on? Okay. No, this is actually wrong, because this, and I think I go back and... Hold on. Do one more on the fly here. We got 5% left. So let's say I had something like 6 plus the square root of 3 over 2 minus the square root of 5. And I was asked to find the quotient of that. So what this means is I don't actually have to do any division. It simply means writing this in a way that has a rational denominator. So what we need to do is we need to multiply this by 2 plus the square root of 5 over 2 plus the square root of 5. Now these two down here, when we FOIL them out, we get 4 plus 2 radical 5 minus 2 radical 5 minus the square root of 25 which then turns into minus 20 minus 5. Those two cancel out, so we end up with 4 minus 5, or negative 1. The top, we simply FOIL those out, and that can get ugly. So we have 6 plus the square root of 3 times 2 plus the square root of 5. That gives me 12 plus 6 radical 5 plus 2 radical 3 plus the square root of 15. Now notice there we have absolutely no common terms. But we're dividing all of that by negative 1. So what I would do, instead of leaving it like that, I would just either do negative and then do 12 plus 6 radical 5 plus 2 radical 3 plus the square root of 15. But if you wanted to leave it like that, that'd be okay too. So hopefully that was informative. And if you guys have any questions about anything, feel free to email me or show up to one of the Zoom lessons. Look forward to seeing you guys. Bye.